Hi! So you created your first charts in Tableau and your first dashboards in Tableau, and they're amazing. They help uncover insights and tell compelling stories. Yet you still find yourself doing a lot of trial and error when you start creating your next charts or your next dashboards. One of the keys to being proficient in Tableau is understanding the concepts of dimensions and measures and knowing the significance of blue and green pills. Knowing these concepts and being comfortable with them will go a long way. So if you feel that you're still confused about some of these terms, this video is for you. I'll see you inside. In this video, we will talk about dimensions and measures, discrete and continuous, blue and green. It might feel like a boring topic because in some ways it's going to be a little bit theoretical. But once you understand this, you'll be really comfortable working with Tableau and you can avoid a lot of that trial and error. So let's dive in. Dimensions and measures are the what. It's what the data is. It's what the data represents. It's the meaning of that data. Borrowing a definition from the Cambridge Dictionary, a dimension is a part or feature or way of considering something. So we can say that a dimension is categorical, it's descriptive, and it's qualitative. It talks about the qualities of something. And this does not necessarily have to be a word. This can be a number. A measure, lifting the definition from the same Cambridge Dictionary, a measure can also mean amount or degree. But I actually like the definition that is lifted from a data warehousing perspective. In a data warehouse, a measure is a property on which calculations, for example, sum, count, average, minimum, maximum, can be made. So we can say that a measure is quantitative and this is numeric, and it's typically aggregated. As far as Tableau is concerned, dimensions and measures are displayed on your canvas. If you are using an older version of Tableau, you will still see dimensions and measures as labels of different groups of data in your sidebar. If you are using the newest version of Tableau, version 2020.2 and newer, you actually won't see these labels anymore. So you don't see dimensions and measures, but they're still grouped in your canvas. So anything above this line is going to be your dimensions, and anything below that line is going to be your measures. Let's move on to discrete and continuous. Discrete and continuous is about the how you want to display this data in Tableau or in your charts. By definition, discrete means separate, distinct, and individual. Discrete in Tableau is manifested as a blue pill. And this blue pill creates headers. They slice up your data. Continuous means without a pause or interruption. In Tableau, you can see continuous fields as green pills, and they are displayed as axes. So you're going to have a number line that will show the values along a continuous range of values without pause, without interruption. Dimension, measure, blue, green, continuous, discrete. Let's put it all together. The what is your dimension and your measure. Remember, it's what the data represents or what the data means. And how is all about the labels and the axes. It's how it is being displayed. So is this how everything lines up? Especially when you look at Tableau and you look at the sample superstore sales, it looks like all of your dimensions are actually blue anyway, and all of your measures are green anyway. But that's actually not how it works. A dimension is not necessarily blue, and a measure is not necessarily green. A dimension will not always produce labels, and a measure will not always produce axes. Again, what's important to understand is your dimension is what the data is all about. You can choose to display it as a header or a label, or as an axis. Your measure, you can display it as a header or label as well, or as an axis. It really depends on the visualization that you're trying to create. So let's jump into Tableau and take a look at what these all mean. In here, I am using the sample superstore sales dataset that comes with your Tableau installation. I'm going to duplicate sales. And I can choose to display one of these as discrete. Note that sales is a measure. It is something that we want to aggregate and analyze on. It is a measure of success in your business. But we can choose to display it either as an axis, in an axis, or as a label. So for example, in this case, we can choose to have this second copy of sales. We can convert this to discrete. It does not change the fact that this is still an aggregatable number. So let's just take a look at the difference on how this is going to be displayed in Tableau. A green pill, a green measure, will always be aggregated by default, and it's going to produce an axis. A green pill, continuous, produces an axis. Okay, so this is what we expect. However, a measure that is a blue pill, a measure that will be displayed as discrete, it's still going to be aggregated because it's still what the data is all about. It is still something that is numeric, that is aggregatable. But in here, the moment we drag it over, it will not produce the axis. It's just going to simply display a header or a label for that value. How about dimensions? Well, let's take a look at dimensions right now. So in this case, we might take a look at row ID. Row ID is qualitative. It is distinct individual values, but it is numeric. So by default, Tableau categorizes this as dimension, and it actually categorizes this as a discrete field. So when we drag this over to Tableau, it will just give us the individual values as headers. But should we need to, if we want to, we can convert this into something that is continuous. It is still qualitative, but we can display it in an axis if that is something we want for our visualization. So when we drag this over now, it's just going to produce an axis for us. So let's take a look at some more realistic use cases. When would we ever want to see a measure to be discrete? So let's take a look at a couple of examples. Let's take subcategory. Let's drag sales, which is a measure. By default, this is going to be aggregated. And let's say we want to display the sales as a label. So control drag sum of sales to label, and it displays all of the labels or all of the values of these bars. But a lot of times we're going to get a request of actually showing the values right beside the actual subcategory names. So let's just adjust this so we can see the full subcategory header right here. There we go. So what can we do? Well, in this case, if what you want is to simply show the values right beside the subcategory as numbers, as a column, then we want to display it as discrete values. So otherwise, it's just going to give us an axis. So just to prove the point, if we drag sum of sales right beside subcategory, Tableau by default will give us a scatter plot. It thinks you have an X and Y axis, and it's just going to give you this intersection of the values. But what we want is actually not an axis. What we want is to display this as the individual values. So from here, we can actually just convert this to discrete. And then now you have sales, which is still a measure, but displayed as labels, as individual values. How about a dimension as a continuous field? When would you ever use that? Let's create the same bar chart, subcategory on rows. We have sales on columns, very simple bar chart. Let's sort this out. And let's say you want to filter this by year. So we can right click on order date, show filter, and by default, Tableau gives you a discrete filter. This discrete filter will itemize all the values of years that you have in your data set. In this case, 2017, 2018, 2019, and 2020. But you may decide that you don't want this to be checkboxes. Instead, you want this to be one continuous range of years. After all, this is sequential numbers. So what you could elect to do is go to your filters and then simply change this into continuous. We're not changing the fact that year of order date is still qualitative. It's still a dimension, but we simply want to just use this as a continuous field. So in this case, we can change this to continuous, and what we get is an axis. In this case, the axis appears in our filter. It's not an actual display, but the filter will be for continuous values. So if we show the filter now, What you get is not the individual values. You get a range of values here. This is it. Half of your battle when you're starting with Tableau is understanding dimensions and measures and blue and green pills. Once you have this down pat, you're well on your way to actually doing more amazing things in Tableau. I'll see you next time.